The first sign something was wrong wasn't the late nights or the mysterious phone calls. It was the way Lindsey started folding her underwear differently. Sounds stupid, right? But after 12 years of marriage, you notice when your wife suddenly develops military-grade precision with her lingerie drawer, especially when she'd never given a damn about organization before. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name's Eric Mallory, and I'm an architect. Not the kind who designs glass towers for billionaires. I'm the guy who makes sure your local strip mall doesn't collapse on your head while you're buying lottery tickets. Blue-collar roots, white-collar job, and a mortgage that keeps me awake at 3 in the morning wondering if I should have listened to my dad about learning a trade instead. Lindsey worked in human resources for Meridian Consulting, one of those companies that sounds important, but nobody can quite explain what they actually do. She's got the corporate smile down to a science and can fire someone while making them thank her for the opportunity. It's a talent, really. We live in a Baltimore condo that I designed myself, which sounds impressive until you realize I designed it during a particularly bitter winter when I was convinced that more insulation was better than natural light. The place feels like a bunker, but it's our bunker. "Eric, I'm going to be late again tonight," Lindsey announced one Thursday morning, not looking up from her phone. She was wearing that new perfume again, something expensive and floral that definitely wasn't the vanilla stuff she'd worn for the past decade. "Policy meeting?" I asked, stirring my coffee. The kitchen island between us might as well have been the Grand Canyon. "Strategic planning session. Grant wants the whole team there." Grant Wells, her boss. 44 years old, drives a black BMW that probably costs more than I make in 6 months, and has the kind of confident handshake that makes you want to count your fingers afterward. I'd met him exactly twice at company functions, and both times he'd managed to make me feel like I was wearing my father's suit to a job interview. "How strategic can it get? You guys process paperwork and handle complaints?" Lindsey finally looked up, her green eyes flashing with irritation. "It's more complex than that, Eric. We're restructuring the entire employee evaluation framework." "Right. Well, try not to restructure too hard. Wouldn't want you to strain something." She grabbed her purse and keys, pausing at the door. "You know, a little support from my husband wouldn't hurt you. Neither would a little honesty from my wife, but here we are." The door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. I sat there for another 10 minutes, staring at my reflection in the black coffee, wondering when we'd started talking to each other like hostile witnesses in a deposition. My office is downtown, wedged between a bail bondsman and a place that sells phone cases. The sign outside reads Mallory Architecture and Design, which makes it sound bigger than it actually is. Inside, it's just me, my project manager Paul Kim, and enough coffee-stained blueprints to paper a small house. Paul's been with me for 8 years. He's got a dry sense of humor and an uncanny ability to spot structural problems before they become lawsuits. He was hunched over his computer when I walked in, squinting at what looked like drainage calculations. "Morning, sunshine," he said without looking up. "You look like someone pissed in your cornflakes." "Just marital bliss in full bloom. How's the Morrison project coming?" "Like watching paint dry, if paint could file complaints with the city planning office." Paul finally turned around, studying my face. "Seriously, what's eating you?" I dropped into my chair, which squeaked in protest. Everything in this office was bought secondhand except the computers, and even those were pushing their 3rd birthday. "Lindsey's been working late a lot, like every night for the past 3 weeks. So, maybe they're actually busy? Corporate types love their meetings." "Maybe." I pulled up the Morrison blueprints on my screen, trying to focus on load-bearing calculations instead of the growing certainty that my marriage was developing some serious structural problems. "It's probably nothing." "Probably," Paul agreed, but his tone suggested he thought it was definitely something. The day crawled by like a city planning review. I tried to concentrate on work, but my mind kept drifting back to Lindsey's new habits. The way she'd started taking her phone into the bathroom, the sudden interest in yoga classes that never seemed to leave her any more flexible, the fact that she'd bought new lingerie but I hadn't seen any of it. Around 5:30, my phone buzzed with a text from Lindsey. "Don't wait up. This is going to run really late. Love you." Love you, not I love you. Just love you, like it was something she'd typed so many times it had lost all meaning, like a corporate email signature. I was packing up when Paul knocked on my office door. "Want to grab a beer? You look like you could use one." "Rain check. I think I'm going to surprise Lindsey with dinner." Paul raised an eyebrow. "Surprise visits to the workplace? That's either really romantic or really stupid." With my track record, probably both. The drive to Meridian Consulting gave me 20 minutes to talk myself out of what I was about to do. Their office was in one of those glass towers I don't design, all reflective surfaces and architectural ego, the kind of building that looks impressive from a distance and soul-crushing from the inside. I parked next to a familiar black BMW and felt my stomach drop 3 floors. The lobby was all marble and chrome, designed to make visitors feel small and employees feel important. The security guard was reading something on his phone and barely glanced up when I signed in. "Delivering dinner to my wife," I explained, holding up the bag from Lindsey's favorite Thai place. "Elevator banks on your right. Floor 15. The elevator was the kind of quiet that only expensive buildings achieve, the kind that makes you hyper-aware of your own breathing. I watched the numbers climb and tried to convince myself that I was just being a thoughtful husband. Floor 15 was mostly dark, except for a few offices at the far end. I could see light spilling out from what I knew was Lindsey's office, and I could hear voices, low voices, the kind people use when they don't want to be overheard. I walked down the carpeted hallway, my footsteps muffled, but my heartbeat thundering in my ears. The voices got clearer as I got closer, and I realized one of them was definitely Lindsey's. The other was male, deep, familiar. "Can't keep doing this here," Lindsey was saying. "Why not? Everyone else has gone home." Grant's voice, confident and amused. "Besides, I like the risk." I stopped walking. The Thai food felt heavy in my hands, like I was carrying evidence to a crime scene, which, in a way, I guess I was. What if someone comes back? What if Eric's not going to come here. When's the last time your husband surprised you with anything? I heard Lindsey laugh, but it wasn't the laugh I knew. This was different, intimate, the kind of laugh that happens right before something that isn't a strategic planning session. I should have left, should have turned around, walked back to the elevator, driven home, and pretended I'd never heard any of it. Should have given them the benefit of the doubt, assumed they were talking about something perfectly innocent. Instead, I took 3 more steps and looked through the partially open door. Lindsey was sitting on her desk, her skirt hiked up, her blouse unbuttoned. Grant was standing between her legs, his tie loosened, his hands on her thighs. They were kissing like teenagers, all urgency and exploration, completely lost in each other. I stood there for maybe 10 seconds, watching my wife of 12 years make out with her boss on the same desk, where she probably processed harassment complaints. The irony wasn't lost on me. My phone was in my hand before I consciously decided to use it. The camera made no sound as I took 3 quick photos, the flash off, the images crystal clear under the office fluorescence. Grant's face was perfectly visible in 2 of them. Lindsey's wedding ring caught the light in the 3rd. I backed away slowly, carefully, my heart hammering so hard I was sure they'd hear it. But they were too busy with their strategic planning session to notice one more shadow in a hallway full of them. The elevator ride down felt like falling in slow motion. The security guard was still reading his phone and didn't look up when I walked past, still carrying the Thai food like some kind of pathetic prop in a play nobody wanted to see. I sat in my car for 15 minutes, staring at the photos on my phone. In the harsh LED light of the parking garage, they looked even more damning. There was no way to misinterpret what I was seeing. No innocent explanation for why my wife was wrapped around her married boss like a teenager at prom. The drive home was a blur of traffic lights and radio static. I kept thinking about the way Lindsey had laughed, the way she'd said my name like it was something distasteful she had to acknowledge. "When's the last time your husband surprised you with anything?" "Well, Lindsey," I thought as I pulled into our parking garage. "Oh, you're about to find out." I sat in my car for another 10 minutes after I got home, staring at our building's concrete walls and trying to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do next. The rationale part of my brain, the part that had gotten me through architecture school and 15 years of dealing with building codes, kept insisting there had to be a logical explanation. Maybe I'd misunderstood what I'd seen. Maybe it was some kind of team-building exercise gone wrong. But the photos on my phone didn't lie, and neither did the sick feeling in my stomach that had been growing for weeks. I finally went upstairs, still carrying the Thai food like an idiot. The condo felt different now, like I was seeing it through new eyes. All those little changes I'd been noticing suddenly made perfect sense. The new perfume, the careful attention to underwear, the way she'd started working out more, buying clothes that showed off her figure. She'd been preparing for someone, just not me. I put the food in the refrigerator and opened a beer, then opened another one. The photos were still on my phone, waiting for me to decide what to do with them. I could confront Lindsey directly, demand an explanation, maybe suggest counseling. That's what a mature, rational adult would do. But I'd spent 12 years being mature and rational, and where had it gotten me? Sitting alone in my own kitchen, drinking beer while my wife screwed her boss 15 miles away. My laptop was on the kitchen counter where I'd left it that morning. I opened it and started doing what architects do best: planning. First, I logged into our joint bank accounts and transferred everything from checking into savings, then moved the savings into an account that only had my name on it. Not illegal. I'd earned most of that money anyway, but it would definitely get Lindsey's attention when her credit card got declined tomorrow. Next, I called our locksmith. Jerry Kowalski owed me a favor from when I'd helped him navigate the permit process for his shop expansion. Jerry, it's Eric Mallory. I need you to change the locks on my condo tomorrow morning, early. Everything okay, Eric? Let's just say I'm upgrading my security system. Got it. No questions asked. I'll be there at 8. Then I did something that probably wasn't entirely legal, but felt absolutely necessary. I plugged Lindsey's phone into my laptop. She'd left it charging on the counter that morning and forgotten to take it, and ran a backup. Every text, every photo, every app. The whole digital history of her affair, assuming there was more to find. There was. The text thread with Grant went back 6 months. It started professional enough. Meeting confirmations, schedule changes, the usual workplace communication. But somewhere around March, the tone shifted. Became flirtier. More personal. Grant: great presentation today. You looked amazing up there. Lindsey: thanks. Felt good to be noticed. Grant: trust me, you're always noticed. It escalated from there. By April, they were texting constantly. Inside jokes, compliments, increasingly obvious innuendo. By May, they weren't even trying to hide it. Lindsey: can't stop thinking about yesterday. Grant: which part? The meeting or what happened after? Lindsey: you know which part. Grant: tell me anyway. The conversation that followed was explicit enough to make me close the laptop and finish my second beer in one long swallow. Then I opened it again and kept reading, because apparently I'm a masochist. There were photos too, not the kind you'd want your grandmother to see. Grant had sent several pictures of himself that definitely weren't taken in any corporate boardroom. Lindsey had returned the favor, using our bedroom as the backdrop for a few artistic selfies that I definitely didn't remember being invited to participate in. The most recent exchange was from that afternoon, just a few hours before I'd walked in on them. Grant: everyone's leaving early today. Perfect timing. Lindsey: I'll make sure we're not interrupted. Grant: good. I have some new ideas for your performance review. Lindsey: I bet you do. I closed the laptop again and opened a third beer. Outside, Baltimore was settling into its usual evening rhythm. Traffic sounds, sirens in the distance, the general urban hum that usually felt like home. Tonight, it sounded like the soundtrack to the end of my marriage. My phone rang. Lindsey's name appeared on the screen, probably calling to check in and maintain the illusion that she was actually working late on legitimate business. I let it go to voicemail. She called again 5 minutes later. Then again. On the fourth call, I finally answered. Hey, I said, trying to sound normal. Hi, honey. I just wanted to check in. This meeting is running really long. I'm sure it is. Are you okay? You sound weird. Just tired. Long day. Well, don't wait up. We might be here until midnight. Doing what exactly? There was a pause, just long enough to be noticeable. I told you. Strategic planning. Restructuring the evaluation framework. Right. The framework. Eric, are you sure you're okay? I'm fine, Lindsey. You focus on your framework. I'll see you when you get home. Okay, love you. Sure. I hung up and immediately felt like throwing the phone across the room. Instead, I opened my laptop again and started making copies of everything I'd found. Screenshots, saved files, printed photos. If I was going to blow up my marriage, I was going to do it with proper documentation. Paul had been right about one thing. Surprise visits to the workplace were either really romantic or really stupid. In my case, they were about to become really expensive, for everyone involved. I spent the next 2 hours researching Meridian Consulting's employee handbook, which was helpfully available on their website. Page 47 had exactly what I was looking for: a detailed policy prohibiting romantic relationships between supervisors and subordinates. A violation could result in immediate termination for both parties. I also looked up Grant's wife on social media. Rebecca Wells, 42, interior designer, very active on Instagram. Lots of photos of their house, their vacations, their anniversary dinners. She looked happy, blissfully unaware that her husband was conducting performance reviews with his subordinates. By 11 o'clock, I had a plan. By midnight, I had implemented step 1. The anonymous email to Meridian's corporate HR department was short and professional. I have evidence of a relationship between Grant Wells and his direct report, Lindsey Mallory, in violation of company policy. Documentation attached. The email to Rebecca Wells was even shorter. Your husband is cheating on you with his employee. Thought you should know. I attached one photo, the clearest one, where both their faces were clearly visible. Then I sat back and waited for the demolition to begin. Lindsey came home at 12:47 a.m., trying to be quiet but failing. I heard her in the kitchen, probably looking for evidence that I'd eaten dinner. The Thai food was still in the refrigerator, untouched. She slipped into bed beside me, smelling like hotel soap and guilt. I pretended to be asleep while she settled in, her breathing gradually slowing as she drifted off. I lay awake until dawn, staring at the ceiling and listening to my wife sleep peacefully next to me. In a few hours, Jerry would change the locks. By lunch, Grant would probably be called into his boss's office. By dinner, Rebecca Wells would have some very pointed questions for her husband. And Lindsey? Lindsey was about to discover that her husband was capable of quite a few surprises after all. The alarm went off at 6:30. Lindsey's usual time. She rolled over and kissed my cheek, the same perfunctory morning kiss she'd been giving me for years. "Good morning," she said, already reaching for her phone. "Morning. Sleep well?" Like a rock, that meeting really wore me out. I bet it did. She scrolled through her messages, frowning slightly, probably wondering why Grant hadn't texted her yet. He was probably dealing with some unexpected drama at home. "I'm going to grab a shower," she announced. "Take your time." As soon as I heard the water running, I got up and checked my email. 3 new messages. The first was from Jerry, confirming that he'd be here at 8. The second was from Paul, asking if I wanted to grab lunch. The third was from an anonymous account with the subject line, "Thank you." I opened it. The message was brief. "Got your email about my husband. Confronted him this morning. He confessed everything. Lawyer meeting this afternoon. You saved me from wasting any more years on that bastard. R.W." Rebecca Wells worked fast. I had to admire that. Lindsey emerged from the bathroom 20 minutes later, wrapped in a towel, her phone in her hand. She was frowning at the screen. "Something wrong?" I asked. "Grant's not answering his texts." "That's weird. He usually responds right away." "Maybe he's busy. You know how it is with strategic planning." She gave me a sharp look but didn't say anything. Just started getting dressed, choosing her outfit more carefully than usual. Probably wanted to look good for the man who might not have a job by lunchtime. "I might be late again tonight," she said, applying lipstick with surgical precision. "Another meeting? We're still working on that framework." "Of course you are." She paused at the bedroom door. "Eric, are you sure everything's okay? You've been acting strange." I looked at her standing there in her carefully chosen outfit, her face perfectly made up for another day of lies, and felt something cold and final settle in my chest. "Everything's fine, Lindsey. Just fine." She left for work at 7:30, kissing me goodbye like she had every morning for 12 years, like nothing had changed, but everything had changed. She just didn't know it yet. Jerry arrived at 8 sharp, just as I'd expected. Professional, efficient, no questions asked. By 8:30, the locks were changed and I had new keys. By 9, I was at my office, trying to pretend it was just another normal day. It wasn't. The first crack in Lindsey's perfect facade appeared at 10:23 a.m. I was reviewing drainage plans for the Morrison project when my phone buzzed with a text from her. "Something's wrong with my credit card. Can you check our account?" I smiled and typed back, "Sure thing, probably just a glitch." Of course, it wasn't a glitch. It was the first domino falling in what I hoped would be a very satisfying chain reaction. Paul knocked on my office door around 11, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing the expression of someone who had gossip to share. "You're not going to believe what I just heard," he said, settling into the chair across from my desk. "Try me." "My buddy Mike works security at that glass tower where your wife works. Says there was some serious drama there this morning. Apparently some executive got called into a meeting with corporate and came out looking like he'd been hit by a truck." I took a sip of coffee, trying to look mildly interested instead of deeply satisfied. "Huh. Wonder what that was about." Mike didn't know details, but he said the guy, some middle management type with a fancy car, was on his phone in the lobby, yelling at someone about lawyers and divorce papers. Made quite a scene. Sounds messy. Gets better. About an hour later, some woman shows up asking for the same guy. Blonde, well-dressed, looked like she was ready to commit murder. Security had to escort her out when she started screaming about cheating bastards and ruined lives. Rebecca Wells, making her presence known. I had to admire her style. "Sounds like someone's having a bad day," I said. "Bad day? Sounds like someone's having a career-ending, marriage-destroying, life-imploding kind of day." Paul studied my face. "You sure you're okay? You look almost happy." "Just glad it's not my drama for once." My phone buzzed again. Another text from Lindsey. Eric, I really need you to check our accounts. My card was declined at lunch and I'm freaking out. This time I called her back. Hey, she answered, and I could hear the stress in her voice. Did you check the accounts? I did. Everything looks fine on my end. That's impossible. The card was definitely declined, and I tried calling the bank, but they said there was some kind of security hold. Security hold? That's weird. Maybe someone tried to use your card fraudulently. Maybe? She didn't sound convinced. Can you transfer some money into checking? I have that work dinner tonight, and I don't want to be embarrassed again. Work dinner. Right. Sure, I'll take care of it. Thank you. I love you. Uh-huh. I hung up and immediately called the bank to report Lindsey's credit card as potentially compromised. They were very understanding and agreed to issue a new card, which would take 5 to 7 business days to arrive. Around 2 o'clock, Paul's buddy Mike called him with an update. The executive, Grant, had been escorted out of the building with a security guard and a box of personal items. Classic termination protocol. Apparently, Paul relayed, the guy's wife showed up again around lunchtime, but this time she brought a photographer. Got pictures of him leaving with his stuff. Mike says she was shouting something about community property and hidden assets. Rebecca Wells was definitely my kind of woman. Thorough, strategic, and absolutely ruthless when crossed. My phone rang at 2:47. Lindsey again, and this time she sounded panicked. Eric, something terrible happened at work. What kind of terrible? Grant got fired. They escorted him out this morning. No explanation, no warning, just gone. I made appropriate shocked noises. That's awful. Do you know why? Nobody's talking, but there are rumors about some kind of policy violation. Corporate sent down investigators and everything. Investigators? Sounds serious. It is serious. And Eric, I think I might be in trouble too. My stomach did a little flip of anticipation. What kind of trouble? They want to see me in HR tomorrow morning. First thing. They wouldn't tell me what it was about, but... She trailed off, and I could practically hear her putting the pieces together. But what? But I worked closely with Grant. If he did something wrong, they might think I was involved. Oh, Lindsey, you were involved, just not in the way you're thinking. I'm sure it's just routine, I said. They probably need to ask you about his projects or something. Maybe. God, I hope so. I can't afford to lose this job, Eric. Not with the mortgage and everything. The mortgage on the condo that was solely in my name, thanks to my better credit score when we'd bought it. Another detail I'd been smart about, apparently. Don't worry about it tonight, I said. Just get through tomorrow's meeting and see what they want. You're right. I'm probably overreacting. Probably. After we hung up, I sat back in my chair and allowed myself a moment of pure, vindictive satisfaction. Grant was gone. Lindsey was panicking. Rebecca Wells was apparently conducting psychological warfare with professional photographers, and I was just getting started. That evening, I stopped by the hardware store and bought a small surveillance camera, the kind paranoid homeowners use to catch package thieves. I installed it in our bedroom, hidden behind a picture frame with a clear view of the bed. Not because I wanted to torture myself with more evidence of Lindsey's infidelity, but because I had a feeling she might try to bring the affair home now that the office was no longer a safe space. I was right. Lindsey came home at 6:30, earlier than she had in weeks. She looked stressed, her usually perfect composure showing cracks around the edges. How was your day? I asked, like the concerned husband I was pretending to be. Awful, just awful. I can't believe Grant's gone. Were you too close? She hesitated just long enough to be telling. We worked together a lot. He was a good boss. I'm sure he was. We ordered pizza for dinner. Lindsey's credit card was still mysteriously non-functional, and ate in relative silence. She kept checking her phone, frowning at the screen. Everything okay? Grant's not answering his texts. I just wanted to make sure he was all right. Maybe he needs some space to process what happened. Maybe. Around 9 o'clock, her phone finally rang. She glanced at the screen and her face lit up with relief. I need to take this, she said, heading for the bedroom. I gave her 5 minutes, then followed quietly. The bedroom door was closed, but I could hear her voice through the thin walls of our poorly insulated condo. So sorry this happened. No, I don't think they know anything. Tomorrow morning, but I'm sure it's just routine. I pressed my ear closer to the door. Can't come over tonight. Eric's being weird. I know. I miss you too. We'll figure something out. There it was. Confirmation that the affair was ongoing, even after Grant's very public termination. They were still planning to see each other, still treating this like some kind of romantic adventure instead of the career-destroying mistake it actually was. I went back to the living room and waited. Lindsey emerged 20 minutes later, looking slightly more composed. "Work stuff?" I asked. "Just a colleague checking in about tomorrow's meeting." "That's nice. It's good to have support." She gave me a strange look. "You're being very understanding about all this." "Why wouldn't I be? We're married. We support each other." Something flickered in her eyes. Guilt, maybe, or recognition of the irony. But she just nodded and settled onto the couch next to me. "What are you watching?" "Documentary about architectural disasters. Thought it might be educational." We sat there for an hour, pretending to watch TV while both of us thought about other things. She was probably planning her next move with Grant. I was planning her complete destruction. At 11, we went to bed. Lindsey fell asleep quickly, exhausted by the day's stress. I lay awake, listening to her breathe and thinking about tomorrow. Her HR meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. By then, they would have had time to review the evidence I'd sent them. The photos, the text messages, the detailed timeline of policy violations. Grant was already gone, but Lindsey still thought she might weather this storm. She had no idea that I was the one who'd created it. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Rebecca Wells. Got your number from my lawyer's investigator. Thank you for the evidence about my husband's affair. It's making the divorce much simpler. I owe you a drink sometime." I smiled in the darkness and typed back, "Just glad I could help. Good luck with everything." "Already got the luck. Now I'm getting revenge. Your wife picked the wrong husband to cheat on." She had no idea how right she was. Lindsey's alarm went off at 6:30, same as always, but this time she hit snooze 3 times before finally dragging herself out of bed. I watched her through half-closed eyes as she stumbled around the room, gathering clothes with none of her usual precision. "Big day," I said, sitting up and stretching, hopefully not too big. She was holding 2 different blouses, trying to decide which one said "innocent employee" more convincingly. "I'm sure it'll be fine. You haven't done anything wrong, right?" The question hung in the air for just a moment too long. "Of course not." She chose the blue blouse, conservative, professional, trustworthy. Good choice for someone about to be fired for sleeping with her boss. I made coffee while she showered, humming quietly to myself. Through the bathroom door, I could hear her on the phone again, voice low and urgent. Probably getting last-minute coaching from Grant on their story. "Everything okay in there?" I called out. "Fine, just checking my voicemails." At 7:15, she emerged from the bedroom looking as polished as she could manage under the circumstances. Professional armor, I called it. The corporate equivalent of war paint. "Wish me luck," she said, kissing my cheek. "You won't need it." After she left, I called in sick to work. Paul would understand. I told him I was dealing with some personal issues and needed the day to sort things out. Not technically a lie. At 8:30, I drove to Meridian Consulting and parked across the street, where I had a clear view of the building entrance. Call it morbid curiosity, but I wanted to see how this played out. Lindsey arrived at 8:45, walking quickly with her head down. She looked smaller somehow, like the building was swallowing her up. At 9:47, she came back out. She was carrying a cardboard box and crying. I felt a surge of something that might have been guilt, but it passed quickly. She'd made her choices. I was just making sure there were consequences. My phone rang as she was putting the box in her car. "Eric?" Her voice was thick with tears. "Can you come pick me up? I don't think I should drive." "What happened?" They fired me, Eric. They said I violated company policy and they had evidence and they fired me." "I'll be right there." I drove around the block and pulled up next to her car, playing the shocked and supportive husband. She climbed into my passenger seat. Mascara streaked down her cheeks, looking like her world had just ended. Which, to be fair, it had. "What evidence?" I asked as we drove home. "Evidence of what?" "They said I had an inappropriate relationship with Grant. They had photos, Eric, photos of us in the office." "Photos? How is that possible?" "I don't know." She was crying harder now, angry tears mixed with panic. "Someone must have been watching us, following us. They knew everything, dates, times, text messages. It was like they'd been building a case for months." "That's terrible. Who would do something like that?" She shook her head, wiping her nose with a tissue. "It had to be someone from the office. Someone jealous, maybe, or someone Grant passed over for a promotion. Maybe." We drove the rest of the way in silence. Lindsey stared out the window, probably trying to figure out how her life had gone from secret affair to public humiliation in less than 24 hours. When we got home, she tried her key in the front door. It didn't work. "That's weird," she said, trying again. Eric, something's wrong with the lock. Oh, right. I had Jerry change them yesterday. Security upgrade. I forgot to mention it. I handed her a new key, watching her face as she processed this information. You changed the locks yesterday, before any of this happened? Yeah, there were some break-ins in the building. I wanted to be safe. She stared at the key in her hand, and I could see the wheels turning. The timing was suspicious, and Lindsey wasn't stupid. Eric, she said slowly, did you know about Grant and me? I could have kept lying, could have played the shocked husband, demanded details, maybe even suggested counseling, but I was tired of pretending, and I wanted her to know exactly who she'd been underestimating. I knew. The words hit her like a physical blow. She actually took a step back. How long? Long enough. The photos, the evidence they had, that was you. That was me. She stared at me for a long moment, and I watched 12 years of marriage crumble in her eyes. You bastard, she whispered. I'm the bastard. I'm not the one who was screwing my boss on company time. You destroyed my career. You ruined my life. No, Lindsey, you did that all by yourself. I just made sure there were consequences. She was crying again, but these were different tears. Angry tears. Desperate tears. What do you want? Money? The condo? I'll give you whatever you want. Just fix this. Call them back. Tell them it was a mistake. I can't fix this. And even if I could, why would I? Because you love me. I did love you. Past tense. Right up until I watched you wrap yourself around Grant Wells like a teenager at prom. She flinched. It didn't mean anything. It was just physical. Just physical, right. That makes it so much better. Eric, please. We can work through this. Couples therapy, counseling, whatever you want. What I want, I said, opening the front door, is for you to pack your things and get out of my condo. Your condo? This is our home. Check the deed. My name, my credit, my down payment. You've been living in my condo for 5 years. The color drained from her face. You can't just throw me out. I'm not throwing you out. I'm asking you to leave. There's a difference. I have nowhere to go. You should have thought of that before you decided to restructure your marriage along with Grant's employee evaluation framework. She stood there in the hallway, holding her box of office supplies, looking lost and broken and nothing like the confident woman who'd kissed me goodbye that morning. I need time, she said finally. Time to figure things out. You have until this weekend. Pack what you need, find somewhere else to stay, and we'll figure out the divorce details later. Divorce? Did you think we were going to work through this? Did you think I was going to forgive and forget and pretend it never happened? I hoped. You hoped wrong. I went inside and left her standing in the hallway. Through the window, I watched her sit in her car for 20 minutes, probably calling Grant, probably crying, probably trying to figure out how everything had gone so wrong so fast. Eventually, she came back inside and went straight to the bedroom. I could hear her opening drawers, pulling clothes off hangers, packing her life into suitcases. My phone buzzed with a text from Paul. How are those personal issues coming along? I typed back. Making progress. Should be resolved soon. Another text, this one from Rebecca Wells. Heard through the grapevine that Grant's girlfriend got fired today. Karma's a beautiful thing. It really is, I replied. Lindsey emerged from the bedroom an hour later with 2 suitcases and a look of grim determination. This isn't over, she said. Yes, it is. I'll fight you on the divorce. I'll take half of everything. Good luck with that. Might want to get a job first, though. Legal fees are expensive. She opened her mouth to say something else, then seemed to think better of it. Instead, she grabbed her keys and headed for the door. Lindsey. She turned back, hope flickering in her eyes. Your credit cards are canceled. Thought you should know. The hope faded. She left without another word. I stood at the window and watched her drive away, probably heading to Grant's place to plan their next move. Let them plan. I was 3 steps ahead and just getting started. My phone rang. Paul again. Hey, you busy tonight? I'm buying drinks for anyone who wants to celebrate the end of the Morrison project. Rain check. I'm celebrating something else tonight. Oh yeah? What's that? I looked around the condo, my condo, quiet and peaceful for the first time in months. Freedom, I said. I'm celebrating freedom. The thing about revenge is that it's like architectural design. You have to think about load-bearing elements, structural integrity, and long-term stability. Rush the job, and the whole thing comes crashing down on your head. I spent the weekend alone in the condo, enjoying the silence and planning phase 2. Lindsey had called 6 times and sent 14 text messages. ranging from apologetic to furious to desperately manipulative. I'd read them all and responded to none. Monday morning brought interesting news from Paul's security guard friend Mike. "Your wife's drama is still providing entertainment at the Glass Tower," Paul reported, settling into my office with his usual coffee and gossip. "Apparently, she showed up there Friday afternoon trying to get back into the building. Security wouldn't let her up. Trying to retrieve something she forgot? Maybe. Or maybe trying to see that Grant guy. Word is he's been hanging around the building, too, even though he's banned from the property. His wife had him served with divorce papers at a Starbucks across the street. Very public, very humiliating." I made sympathetic noises while internally applauding Rebecca Wells's flair for dramatic timing. "There's more," Paul continued. "Mike says Lindsey got into a screaming match with some woman in the parking garage yesterday. Blonde, well-dressed, looked like she could afford good lawyers. Rebecca and Lindsey had met. I would have paid money to see that conversation." "Sounds messy," I said. "Messy doesn't begin to cover it. Mike says the blonde woman was taking pictures with her phone, documenting everything. Very methodical, very professional." That afternoon, I got confirmation of what had happened when Rebecca Wells called me directly. "I met your wife yesterday," she said without preamble. "How did that go?" "About as well as you'd expect. She tried to blame me for ruining her life, said if I'd been a better wife, Grant wouldn't have needed to look elsewhere." "Classy." "Oh, it gets better. She actually suggested we team up against our husbands, said we were both victims of men who couldn't appreciate what they had." I laughed despite myself. "What did you tell her?" "I told her that the difference between us is that I was an innocent victim, while she was a willing participant. Then I took pictures of her car and license plate for my lawyer's files." "Thorough." "I'm very thorough, which is why I'm calling, actually. My investigator found some interesting information about your wife's financial situation." "Such as?" "Such as the fact that she's been staying at Grant's apartment since Friday, but Grant can't afford the rent without his job. He's been borrowing money from friends, maxing out credit cards. They're both in serious financial trouble." "That's unfortunate." "It's about to get more unfortunate. I'm filing a civil suit against both of them for intentional infliction of emotional distress and alienation of affection. Maryland still recognizes those torts, and I have excellent documentation." I was beginning to understand why Grant had cheated on this woman. She was terrifying in the best possible way. "How can I help?" "I need you to testify about the timeline of their affair. When you first suspected, what evidence you found, that sort of thing." "I'd be happy to." "Excellent. My lawyer will be in touch." After we hung up, I sat back in my chair and marveled at how perfectly everything was falling into place. Grant and Lindsey thought they were dealing with two separate, uncoordinated divorces. They had no idea that Rebecca and I were essentially tag-teaming their destruction. That evening, I decided to check on my surveillance camera. I'd been monitoring it remotely through an app on my phone, but there hadn't been any activity since Lindsey moved out. Until today. The motion sensor had triggered at 2:17 p.m. while I was at work. The footage showed Lindsey letting herself into the condo. Apparently, she'd made a copy of her new key before returning the original, and going straight to the bedroom. She wasn't alone. Grant was with her, looking haggard and desperate. They were arguing about something, their voices too low for the camera's microphone to pick up clearly. But their body language told the story. Pointing fingers, frustrated gestures, the universal semaphore of a relationship under extreme stress. Then they were on the bed. My bed, the one I'd shared with Lindsey for 5 years, and I had to fast forward through what came next. Not because I was jealous or heartbroken, but because it was just pathetic. Two desperate people clinging to each other while their lives imploded around them. The really interesting part came after. They lay there talking for almost an hour, and this time the camera picked up enough audio to be useful. "Can't keep staying at my place," Grant was saying. "The landlord's asking questions about the extra tenant, and I can't afford to get evicted. So what are we supposed to do? Eric changed the locks, canceled my credit cards. I'm completely cut off. What about your friends? Can't you stay with someone? I tried Megan, but she's not returning my calls. I think she's afraid of getting dragged into this mess." "Your family? My parents? Are you kidding? They just lecture me about the sanctity of marriage and tell me to beg Eric for forgiveness. Maybe that's not such a bad idea." There was a long pause. "You want me to go back to him?" "I want us to survive this. And right now, that might mean making some strategic compromises." Strategic compromises? Even in their most intimate moments, Grant couldn't stop talking like a corporate consultant. "You mean you want me to convince Eric to take me back so I have somewhere to live while you figure out your own problems?" "That's not what I meant. That's exactly what you meant." The argument that followed was vicious and revealing. Grant accused Lindsey of being clingy and unrealistic about their future together. Lindsey accused Grant of being selfish and cowardly. They were both right. By the time they left, separately after another hour of recriminations, I had everything I needed for the next phase of my plan. I called Rebecca Wells. "I have something you're going to want to see," I told her. "Evidence?" "Video evidence. High definition, excellent audio, very recent." "How recent?" "This afternoon. In my bedroom." There was a pause. "They're still seeing each other." "They're still seeing each other, and they're planning strategy for how to manipulate their respective spouses into providing financial support while they figure out their next move. Send me everything." "Already done." "Eric, you realize what this means for both our cases?" "I realize that adultery is one thing, but ongoing adultery combined with trespassing and conspiracy to commit fraud is something else entirely." "Exactly. My lawyer is going to be very happy." "So is mine." Because I'd finally hired one. The best divorce attorney in Baltimore, according to online reviews. Someone with a reputation for being thorough, aggressive, and absolutely ruthless when it came to protecting her client's assets. Lindsey thought she was going to fight me for half of everything. She had no idea that by the time I was done, she'd be lucky to walk away with half of nothing. The surveillance footage was just the beginning. Over the next few days, I documented every violation of the restraining order I was about to file, every attempt to access accounts she no longer had permission to use, every lie she told to mutual friends about why our marriage had ended. I was building a case, brick by brick, like the solid foundations I designed for a living. And unlike the passionate, impulsive affair that had destroyed her career, my revenge was going to be built to last. Phase 3 was about to begin. The restraining order was approved on Thursday morning. Lindsey was served with papers at Grant's apartment building while she was bringing in groceries, a detail I knew because Rebecca Wells' investigator had been documenting their every move for the past week. The order was comprehensive. No contact with me, no access to the condo, no use of any shared accounts or credit cards. Violation would result in immediate arrest. My phone started ringing 20 minutes after she was served. I let it go to voicemail. "Eric, this is insane. A restraining order? I'm your wife. You can't just cut me off from everything. Call me back right now." The second voicemail was angrier. "I talked to a lawyer, Eric. You can't do this. I have rights. I'm entitled to spousal support, and you can't just freeze me out of our accounts." The third one was desperate. "Please, Eric, I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry about Grant. I'm sorry about everything. But this is too much. I need money for food, for gas, for basic necessities. You're being cruel." I saved all 3 messages and forwarded them to my attorney. Evidence of ongoing harassment, in violation of the restraining order she'd been served with less than an hour earlier. Paul knocked on my office door around noon, carrying lunch and wearing his most diplomatic expression. "So," he said, settling into the chair across from my desk, "want to talk about why half the city seems to know about your personal business?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, Mike the security guard isn't the only one talking. Word's getting around about your wife, her boss, the whole mess. People are starting to ask questions." I unwrapped my sandwich, considering how much to tell him. Paul had been loyal for 8 years, and he'd earned some honesty. Lindsey was having an affair with her boss. I found out, documented it, and reported them to corporate HR. They both got fired. Now we're getting divorced. Paul whistled low. "Damn, Eric, that's thorough. I'm an architect. I believe in solid foundations and structural integrity. And total demolition when something's beyond repair? Sometimes that's the most cost-effective solution." He studied my face for a moment. "You're not done, are you?" "Not even close." That afternoon brought the news I'd been waiting for. Rebecca Wells called with an update from her lawyer. "The civil suit is moving forward," she said. "Grant's attorney tried to get it dismissed, but the judge ruled that we have sufficient evidence to proceed to trial." "What about the criminal charges?" "Trespassing charges were filed this morning. The video you provided shows clear evidence that they entered your property without permission after being explicitly told to stay away." "And the fraud investigation?" "Still ongoing, but it looks promising. Using your credit cards after you'd revoked permission, attempting to access joint accounts after being legally separated, it all adds up to a pattern of financial misconduct. Everything was falling into place with the precision of a well-designed building, each element supporting the next, the whole structure designed to withstand any attempt at demolition." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Megan Harper, Lindsey's friend. We need to talk." Interesting. Megan had been conspicuously absent from Lindsey's life since the affair became public knowledge. I texted back, "About what?" "About the fact that you're destroying an innocent woman's life over a mistake." I almost laughed. "Innocent woman?" "Meet me at Murphy's Bar on Charles Street. 1 hour. Why would I do that? Because I have information you need to hear. I considered ignoring her, but curiosity won out. Murphy's was a dive bar near the harbor, the kind of place where conversations got lost in the ambient noise of sports broadcasts and clinking glasses. Megan was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with a half-empty wine glass and the look of someone who'd been rehearsing a speech. "Eric," she said as I sat down, "thank you for coming." "What information?" She took a sip of wine, gathering her courage. "Lindsey didn't tell you the whole truth about her affair with Grant." "I'm pretty sure I got the essential details." "No, you didn't." Megan leaned forward, lowering her voice. "It wasn't just physical. Grant was manipulating her, pressuring her. She tried to end it several times, but he threatened her job." "So it was harassment." "Exactly. She was a victim, Eric. And instead of supporting her, you've destroyed her life." I signaled the bartender for a beer, taking my time to respond. "That's an interesting story, Megan. Very sympathetic. There's just one problem with it." "What?" "It's complete bullshit." Her face flushed. "Excuse me?" "I've seen the text messages, all of them. I've seen the photos they sent each other. I've watched the video of them in my bedroom, planning how to manipulate their spouses for financial support." I took a sip of beer. If Lindsey was being harassed, she was the most enthusiastic victim in history. Megan's composure cracked. "You recorded them? In your own bedroom?" "My bedroom. My house. My right to install security cameras." That's sick." "What's sick is a married woman bringing her lover into the bed she shares with her husband. What's sick is two people conspiring to commit fraud while they're screwing each other in someone else's home." Lindsey made a mistake. Lindsey made a choice, multiple choices over a period of months, and now she's dealing with the consequences. Megan stood up abruptly. "You're a monster." "I'm a man who refuses to be a victim. There's a difference." She left without another word, probably to report back to Lindsey that the sympathy angle wasn't going to work. My phone rang as I was finishing my beer. Rebecca Wells again. "Change of plans," she said. "Grant's lawyer wants to settle out of court." "For how much?" "Everything. He's offering to give me the house, his retirement accounts, everything in exchange for dropping the civil suit and agreeing not to pursue criminal charges." "That's a complete capitulation." "It gets better. Apparently your wife convinced him to use their joint credit card to hire a private investigator to dig up dirt on both of us. The PI found nothing useful, but the expense pushed Grant into bankruptcy territory." "Joint credit card?" "They've been living together for 2 weeks, sharing expenses, making financial decisions as a couple. My lawyer says it strengthens our case that this wasn't just a casual affair. It was a planned relationship that destroyed 2 marriages." "Are you going to accept the settlement?" "I'm considering it. What about you? Are you ready to wrap this up?" I thought about Lindsey, probably sitting in Grant's apartment right now, planning her next desperate move. I thought about the restraining order she'd already violated 3 times today with her phone calls. I thought about the criminal charges pending and the divorce proceedings that would leave her with nothing. "Not quite yet," I said. "I have one more surprise planned." "What kind of surprise?" "The kind that ensures this never happens again. Because the thing about structural collapse is that it has to be complete. Leave one load-bearing wall standing, and the whole building might still be salvageable. But take out every support, remove every foundation, and what you're left with is a clean slate, a place to build something better." The final phase of my plan required perfect timing and one crucial element I'd been saving for last. Grant's wife wasn't the only one with a private investigator. I'd hired my own PI 3 days after catching Lindsey in the office, a former Baltimore cop named Danny Rodriguez, who specialized in financial fraud cases. While Rebecca's investigator had been documenting Grant and Lindsey's movements, Danny had been following their money. What he'd found was even better than I'd hoped. "Your wife's been busy," Danny reported over coffee at a diner near my office. "She's opened 3 new credit cards using your joint tax returns as income verification, all without your knowledge or consent. That's identity theft. Gets better. She's also been applying for personal loans, listing herself as employed at Meridian Consulting. When the lenders call to verify employment, she's been having Grant pose as her supervisor and provide fake references. That's fraud. Multiple counts of fraud. Wire fraud, if any of the applications cross state lines electronically. We're talking federal charges, Eric." I sat back in the booth, marveling at Lindsey's capacity for self-destruction. "How much money are we talking about?" $47,000 spread across various accounts. She's been using it to pay Grant's rent, buy groceries, even make payments on his BMW. So she's supporting him with money she stole using my identity. That's exactly what she's doing. And here's the beautiful part. Every transaction is documented. Electronic trails, signed applications, recorded phone calls with lenders. It's an airtight case. What's the next step? That's up to you. I can turn this over to the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit today, or we can sit on it and see what other mistakes she makes. I thought about it for exactly 30 seconds. Turn it in. Today. You sure? Once this goes federal, there's no taking it back. I'm sure. That afternoon, while FBI agents were reviewing Danny's evidence, I received an unexpected visitor at my office. Lindsey had somehow convinced building security to let her up, probably with some story about being my wife and needing to discuss urgent business. She looked terrible. Thin, pale, wearing clothes that hadn't been washed recently. The polished corporate executive was gone, replaced by someone who looked desperate and slightly unhinged. "We need to talk," she said, closing my office door behind her. "We have a restraining order that says otherwise. Eric, please, just 5 minutes." I should have called security immediately, should have had her arrested for violating the restraining order, but I was curious to hear what she thought she could possibly say that would change anything. 5 minutes. She sat down across from my desk, in the same chair where Paul usually sat with his morning gossip and coffee. The contrast was jarring. Paul belonged in my life, while Lindsey had become a stranger. "I know you hate me," she began, "and I understand why. What I did was wrong, and I've hurt you in ways I can never take back. 4 minutes and 30 seconds. But this has gone too far, Eric. The restraining order, the frozen accounts, the criminal charges. You're trying to destroy me completely." "I'm not trying to destroy you, Lindsey. I'm just refusing to subsidize your destruction of yourself." "What does that mean?" "It means that every bad thing that's happened to you in the past 2 weeks is a direct result of choices you made. I didn't make you have an affair. I didn't make you lie to lenders or commit fraud. I just made sure there were consequences." Her composure finally cracked. "Consequences? You call this consequences? I can't get a job because you destroyed my reputation. I can't rent an apartment because you ruined my credit. I can't even buy groceries because you canceled all my cards. You can't get a job because you were fired for violating company policy. You can't rent an apartment because you don't have income. You can't buy groceries because you don't have money. I'm not the cause of these problems. I'm just not the solution to them anymore. I'm your wife. You were my wife. Past tense, right up until you decided that Grant Wells was more important than our marriage." She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks in black streaks. "What do you want me to do? Beg? Grovel? I'll do whatever you want, Eric. Just please stop this." "What I want," I said, standing up, "is for you to leave my office before I call security." "Eric, time's up." She sat there for another moment, probably trying to think of some other angle to work, some other way to manipulate the situation. When nothing came to her, she finally stood up. "You used to love me," she said. "I used to think I knew you. Turns out I was wrong about both." She left without another word, and I watched from my window as she got into Grant's BMW, which would probably be repossessed within the week, according to Danny's financial investigation. My phone rang 10 minutes later. Rebecca Wells. "The FBI just contacted my lawyer," she said. "Apparently, there's a federal investigation into financial fraud involving our respective spouses." "Interesting. Very interesting. Especially since the evidence suggests they've been using your identity to obtain credit, then using that credit to fund their lifestyle together. That would be a serious crime. Multiple serious crimes. My lawyer says if they're convicted, we could be looking at restitution payments that would essentially give us everything they have or ever will have. Justice is beautiful sometimes. It really is. There's something else, though. Grant called me this morning. What did he want? To make a deal. He's willing to testify against Lindsey in exchange for a reduced sentence." I felt a cold smile spread across my face. Honor among thieves. "Apparently not. He's claiming that the fraud was all her idea, that she pressured him into helping her, that he was just another victim of her manipulation. And you believe him?" "I don't believe anything either of them says, but I do believe in letting them destroy each other while we watch from a safe distance." That evening, I sat in my condo, my clean, quiet, peaceful condo, and reviewed everything that had happened in the past 3 weeks. Lindsey and Grant had both lost their jobs, their reputations, their financial stability, and their freedom. They were facing federal charges, civil lawsuits, and the complete collapse of everything they'd built together. And I was just getting started, because tomorrow, Danny would deliver the final piece of evidence to the FBI. Video footage of Grant and Lindsey in my bedroom, discussing their plans to manipulate their spouses and continue their fraud scheme. Evidence that would prove this wasn't a crime of passion or desperation, but a calculated conspiracy between two people who thought they were smarter than everyone else. My phone buzzed with a text from Paul. "Heard through the grapevine that your wife got arrested today. You okay?" I typed back, "Never better. See you tomorrow." Then I opened a beer, turned on the news, and waited for the story to break. The blueprint for Lindsey's ruin was finally complete. The news broke on Friday morning. Local couple arrested in federal fraud scheme. Channel 11 ran the story during their morning broadcast, complete with footage of FBI agents leading Grant and Lindsey out of his apartment building in handcuffs. I watched it over coffee and toast, marveling at how different Lindsey looked in an orange jumpsuit. Gone was any trace of the polished corporate executive. She looked exactly like what she was, a common criminal who'd gotten caught. Paul called before I'd finished my second cup of coffee. "Holy shit, Eric, are you watching the news?" "I am." "They're calling it a sophisticated identity theft ring. $47,000 in fraudulent loans and credit applications." Sophisticated might be overstating it. "The reporter said they used your tax returns and employment information to qualify for credit, then spent the money on rent, car payments, even a vacation to Ocean City. A vacation I'd unknowingly funded. The irony was almost poetic." "You doing okay?" Paul asked. "This has got to be surreal." "I'm fine. Better than fine, actually." "Yeah? How so?" "Because it's over. Finally, completely over." And it was. The criminal charges would keep both Lindsey and Grant occupied for the next few years. The civil suits would ensure they'd be paying restitution for decades. The public humiliation would follow them wherever they tried to rebuild their lives. Most importantly, I was free. Free from a marriage that had been built on lies, free from a wife who'd seen me as nothing more than a financial safety net, free to start over with a clean slate. My lawyer called around noon with an update on the divorce proceedings. "Given the criminal charges, this is going to be much simpler than we originally anticipated," she said. "Your wife's attorney is recommending that she accept whatever terms you offer, rather than risk having the fraud charges influence the property settlement." "What are you recommending?" "That we offer her nothing. The condo is in your name, the business is yours, and the retirement accounts were all funded by your income. Given that she's facing federal charges for stealing your identity, I think we can make a compelling case that she's entitled to exactly 0% of your assets. Do it." "There is one complication. She's asked to speak with you directly." "Absolutely not." "She claims she has information that could be valuable to your civil case against her." "What kind of information?" "She wouldn't say, but she's desperate, Eric. Desperate people sometimes make interesting offers." I thought about it for a moment. Lindsey had already lost everything that mattered to her. Her job, her reputation, her freedom, her future. What could she possibly have left to bargain with? "Set up a meeting, but I want it recorded, I want witnesses, and I want it in your office with security present." "Done." The meeting was scheduled for Monday morning. I spent the weekend trying to imagine what Lindsey thought she could possibly say that would change anything. She was facing federal charges, civil liability, and complete financial ruin. Her boyfriend had already thrown her under the bus to save himself. What cards did she think she still had to play? Monday morning arrived gray and rainy, the kind of Baltimore weather that makes everything look slightly depressing. Lindsey was already waiting in my lawyer's conference room when I arrived, flanked by her court-appointed attorney and looking like she hadn't slept in days. "Eric," she said as I sat down across from her, "thank you for agreeing to see me." I didn't respond, just sat there waiting for her to make whatever desperate pitch she'd rehearsed. "I know you hate me," she continued, "and I know I deserve everything that's happening to me, but I have something you need to know." "I'm listening." "Grant didn't just manipulate me into having an affair. He's been embezzling money from Meridian Consulting for years, hundreds of thousands of dollars." My lawyer leaned forward. "Do you have proof of this?" "I have bank account numbers, transaction records, emails discussing how to hide the money, everything." "Why didn't you report this earlier?" Lindsey looked down at her hands. "Because I was in love with him. Because I thought we were going to be together, and I didn't want to destroy his life." "But now you do?" "Now I know he's been using me from the beginning. The affair wasn't about love or attraction. It was about having someone on the inside to help him cover his tracks. When I got suspicious about some of the financial reports I was processing, he seduced me to keep me quiet." I studied her face, looking for signs that this was just another manipulation. But she looked genuinely broken, genuinely betrayed. "What do you want in exchange for this information?" "I want you to ask the prosecutor to consider a plea deal. I'll testify against Grant, provide all the evidence of his embezzlement, in exchange for a reduced sentence on the fraud charges." "And what do I get out of this?" "Justice. Real justice. Grant Wells has been stealing from his company for years, using women like me to cover his tracks. He deserves to go to prison for a long time. My lawyer and I exchanged glances. If Lindsey was telling the truth, this could be huge. Embezzlement on that scale would mean federal charges that could put Grant away for decades. We'll need to verify everything you're claiming, my lawyer said. I understand. I have copies of everything hidden in a safety deposit box. Account numbers, wire transfer records, emails going back 3 years. Why should we believe you? For the first time since I'd walked in, Lindsey looked directly at me. Because I have nothing left to lose, Eric. My career is over, my reputation is destroyed, I'm facing federal charges. The only thing I have left is the truth. The truth? That's rich, coming from you. I know I lied to you, I know I betrayed you in the worst possible way. But this isn't about us anymore. This is about making sure that Grant pays for everything he's done. I sat back in my chair, considering her offer. Grant had already tried to throw Lindsey under the bus to save himself. If she was telling the truth about the embezzlement, it would be poetic justice to watch him go down for crimes that dwarfed anything she'd done. I'll consider it, I said finally. Eric, please. I know I don't deserve your help, but you're right. You don't deserve my help. But Grant Wells deserves to be in prison, and if helping you is the way to make that happen, then that's what I'll do. Relief flooded her face. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. If you're lying about any of this, if this is just another scheme to manipulate the situation, I'll make sure you get the maximum sentence on every charge. I'm not lying. I swear to you, Eric, I'm not lying. I stood up to leave, then paused at the door. Lindsey? Yes? This doesn't change anything between us. We're still getting divorced, you're still facing charges, and I still never want to see you again after this is over. I understand. Good. Because the only reason I'm helping you destroy Grant is because he deserves it even more than you do. I left her sitting in that conference room, probably crying again, probably realizing that even her final gambit would only save her from complete destruction, not restore anything she'd lost, but that was fine with me. Because in 3 weeks, I'd gone from being a betrayed husband to being the architect of the most complete revenge I could have imagined. Grant and Lindsey had thought they were so clever, so sophisticated, so much smarter than the boring architect who paid the bills and asked no questions. They'd been wrong about everything, including how far I was willing to go to make sure they paid for it.